What you call confidence, the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you hold eye contact, most of it is not yours. It was given to you, approved by others, conditioned into you. You learned when to speak, when to stay quiet, when to shrink, when to act acceptable. And now you think that's confidence? Not. That's permission. You hesitate not because you are weak, but because you were trained to hesitate, trained to fear rejection, trained to avoid risk, trained to stay small so others feel comfortable around you. Every time you overthink, every time you doubt yourself, every time you hold back your words or delay your actions, that's not your true nature. That's programming. And here's the truth most people will never accept. Real confidence is not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't beg for attention. Real confidence is silent control. It is the ability to act without internal resistance, to move without asking for approval, to decide without explaining yourself to the world. That's power. Because in a world where everyone is controlled by fear, opinions, and invisible rules, the person who controls himself becomes untouchable. Think about it. The moment you stop needing validation, you become dangerous. The moment you stop explaining your decisions, you become unpredictable. The moment you stop hesitating, you become unstoppable. And that's exactly what this video is going to do to you. These 7 ruthless lessons are not here to motivate you. Motivation is temporary, weak. It fades the moment things get hard. This is different. This will reprogram how you think, how you react under pressure, how you move when others freeze. You will start seeing fear differently. You will start using silence differently. You will start making decisions with a level of control that most people never reach in their entire life. But understand this clearly. This is not for everyone, because once you see the truth, you can't go back to being average. You can't go back to overthinking every move. You can't go back to living under someone else's expectations. You either evolve, or you stay exactly where you are. So the question is simple. Are you ready to remove hesitation from your mind and replace it with controlled power? Before we move forward, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I control myself. Number 1, build an internal authority system. Most people don't make decisions. They outsource them. They look around, scan reactions, measure opinions, and then adjust their behavior to match what feels safe. They follow trends, obey unspoken rules, and align themselves with what gets accepted. Not because it's right, but because it avoids conflict. This is why they hesitate. Because when your direction comes from outside, every step requires confirmation. Every move feels uncertain. Every choice becomes a risk. Not because the situation is dangerous, but because you don't trust your own judgment. Understand this clearly. If you need approval before you act, you are not in control. You are being managed. And the more you depend on external signals, the weaker your decision-making becomes. You start second-guessing simple choices. You delay actions that should be immediate. You wait for the right time, the right response, the right conditions. But those conditions never arrive. Because external authority is unstable. It shifts with people, environments, and circumstances. What is accepted today can be rejected tomorrow. What works in one room can fail in another. So, if your confidence is built on that, it will always collapse under pressure. Powerful individuals operate differently. They don't look outward for direction. They create it internally. They build a system of standards, rules, and principles that do not change based on opinion, a structure that guides their behavior regardless of the environment they are in. This is internal authority, And once it's established, hesitation disappears because decisions are no longer emotional. They become automatic. You don't ask, "What will they think?" You ask, "Does this align with my standard?" You don't pause to measure reactions. You execute based on clarity. That's the shift. Now, here's where most people fail. They believe internal authority means arrogance, acting without listening, ignoring all feedback. That's not power, that's ignorance. Real internal authority is not about rejecting input. It's about filtering it. You listen, you observe, you gather information, but the final decision always comes from you. No hesitation, no dependence. You decide what matters. You decide what is acceptable. You decide how you move. That level of control changes everything, because when your standards are clear, your behavior becomes consistent. And consistency creates identity. People begin to recognize a pattern in you. You don't bend under pressure. You don't shift based on approval. You don't break when challenged. That's when respect starts forming. Not because you demanded it, but because your actions prove stability. And stability is rare. Now, let's make this practical. Start defining your internal rules, not vague ideas, not emotional statements, clear, non-negotiable standards. What do you tolerate? What do you reject? How do you respond under pressure? What actions do you take regardless of fear? Write them, refine them, live by them. Because the moment you create your own system, you remove dependency. And once dependency is removed, hesitation loses its foundation. You stop waiting. You stop adjusting. You stop seeking permission. You move. This is where confidence begins, not in how you feel, but in how you decide. Because when your mind knows that every action comes from a controlled internal system, it stops resisting. There is no confusion, no conflict, only direction, and direction creates speed. Speed creates dominance. So, if you want to eliminate hesitation at its root, stop asking the world how to move. Build your own system and follow it without compromise. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I decide my rules. Number 2, train yourself to normalize pressure. Most people don't fail because they lack skill. They fail because they collapse under pressure. The moment intensity rises, their breathing changes, their thoughts scatter, their actions slow down. Their mind shifts from execution to survival. Instead of focusing on what needs to be done, they focus on what could go wrong. And in that moment, they lose control. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. It reveals your default patterns, your emotional triggers, your level of control when things are no longer comfortable. That's why two people can face the same situation and respond completely differently. One freezes, the other moves with precision. One hesitates, the other adapts instantly. The difference is not talent, the difference is conditioning. Weak minds avoid pressure. They design their lives around comfort. They choose easy environments, predictable routines, and low-risk decisions. They think this protects them, but in reality, it makes them fragile. Because the less pressure you experience, the less capable you become when it finally appears. And it always appears. In conversations that matter, in decisions that carry consequences, in moments where hesitation costs opportunity. If you are not trained for those moments, you will default to fear. Now understand this. Pressure is not your enemy. It is your training ground. The goal is not to eliminate it. That's impossible. The goal is to normalize it, to the point where it no longer disrupts your thinking or your actions. This is how you build real confidence. Not by avoiding discomfort, but by making it familiar. Because what is familiar no longer feels threatening. When your mind repeatedly experiences high-pressure situations, something changes. The emotional spikes begin to flatten. The intensity that once overwhelmed you starts to feel manageable. Your breathing stabilizes, your thoughts become clearer, your reactions become controlled. You stop panicking, you start performing. But this doesn't happen by accident. It requires deliberate exposure. You have to place yourself in environments where pressure exists, situations where the outcome matters, where there is risk, uncertainty, and the possibility of failure. Not once, not occasionally, repeatedly. You train under it. You stay in it longer than you want to. You resist the urge to escape. You observe how your mind reacts, how your body responds, how your behavior shifts. And instead of avoiding those reactions, you learn to control them. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your instincts will tell you to retreat, to delay, to find an easier path. That's your old conditioning trying to protect you. Ignore it, because every time you stay in pressure without collapsing, you rewire your response. You prove to your mind that intensity is not danger, it's just a condition. And once your mind accepts that, everything changes. You begin to operate differently in situations that used to control you. You speak with more clarity when others hesitate. You make decisions faster when others overthink. You remain steady when others lose composure. That's when people start noticing a shift. They won't understand it. They won't know why you seem calm when things get intense, but they will feel it. Because most people are ruled by pressure, and when they see someone who isn't, it stands out immediately. Now here's the deeper advantage. When pressure becomes normal to you, it becomes abnormal to others. That gives you control, because while they are reacting emotionally, you are thinking strategically. While they are trying to escape discomfort, you are using it as an advantage. While they are slowing down, you are moving forward. This is how dominance is built. Not through aggression, not through force, but through stability under conditions that break others. So if you want to become fearlessly confident, stop trying to feel ready. Start training under pressure. Put yourself in situations that challenge your control. Stay there. Adapt. Repeat. Until what once overwhelmed you becomes your natural environment. That's when hesitation disappears. Because pressure no longer signals danger. It signals opportunity. I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. Pressure builds me. Number 3. Control perception, not expression. Most people are obsessed with expressing themselves. They want to be understood. They want to be seen. They want to show everything they feel, everything they think, everything they are. And they believe that honesty equals power. It doesn't. Uncontrolled expression is exposure, and exposure without strategy makes you predictable. When people can easily read you, they can anticipate you. When they can anticipate you, they can influence you. They know what triggers you, what excites you, what frustrates you. Your reactions become patterns. Your patterns become weaknesses. This is why emotional transparency, when unmanaged, reduces your authority. Because power is not about revealing everything. It is about deciding what should be seen and what should remain hidden. Understand this shift. You are not here to express yourself fully. You are here to control how you are perceived. That changes everything. Because perception shapes reality. People don't respond to who you are internally. They respond to what they can observe. To your behavior, your tone, your timing, your presence, and all of these can be controlled. This is where strategic awareness begins. Instead of asking, "How do I feel right now?" you start asking, "What should be visible right now?" That single question separates emotional individuals from controlled ones. Because when you operate based on expression, your actions are reactive. You respond to internal states, to moods, to impulses. You say things you didn't plan. You reveal things you didn't need to. You react in ways that reduce your position. But when you operate based on perception, your actions become intentional. You choose your words carefully. You control your reactions. You decide when to speak and when silence creates more impact. Silence, in particular, is one of the most underestimated tools. Most people talk to fill space. They rush to explain, to justify, to prove themselves. They think more words equal more control. In reality, it does the opposite. The more you speak without purpose, the more information you give away. The more you explain, the more you expose your thinking. And the more you expose, the easier it becomes for others to read and predict you. Controlled individuals don't rush to fill silence. They let it work. Because silence creates tension. It creates curiosity. It forces others to project their own assumptions onto you, and those assumptions often work in your favor. This is where perception becomes a weapon. You don't need to dominate conversations. You don't need to prove intelligence. You don't need to reveal your full intentions. You only need to show what benefits your position. Nothing more. Now, this doesn't mean becoming fake or deceptive. It means becoming selective. You still operate with awareness. You still observe reality clearly, but you filter what you express. You remove unnecessary reactions. You eliminate emotional leakage. Your face doesn't reveal everything. Your tone doesn't expose insecurity. Your behavior doesn't fluctuate based on pressure. You become consistent and controlled. That consistency builds a certain image. People begin to see you as composed, hard to read, difficult to influence, and that creates a psychological distance that increases your authority. Because when others cannot fully understand you, they respect you more. They become cautious. They think twice before acting against you. They hesitate while you remain steady. This is the advantage. You are no longer reacting to the environment. You are shaping how the environment reacts to you. And once you reach that level, confidence becomes automatic because you are not trying to be liked. You are managing how you are seen. So if you want to move with power, stop expressing everything. Start controlling perception. Decide what people see. Decide what they don't. And most importantly, decide why. That's how you build presence. That's how you build authority. That's how you become someone others cannot easily figure out or control. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I control perception. Number 4, turn fear into strategic data. Most people run from fear. The moment it appears, they retreat. They distract themselves. They delay action. They search for comfort to silence the feeling. And while they believe they are protecting themselves, they are actually losing information. Because fear is not just an emotion, it is a signal. It points directly to the areas where you lack clarity, preparation, or control. It exposes uncertainty. It highlights gaps. It shows you exactly where your structure is weak. But if your first instinct is to escape it, you never decode it. You stay blind, and blindness creates vulnerability. Understand this clearly. Fear is not the problem. Misinterpretation is. You were trained to see fear as danger, as something negative, as something to avoid. But in reality, fear is one of the most accurate feedback systems you have. It tells you where the risk is. It tells you what matters. It tells you where your limits currently exist. And once you understand that, fear stops being something that controls you. It becomes something you analyze. Instead of reacting emotionally, you start breaking it down. You ask precise questions. What exactly am I afraid of? What is the worst-case scenario? How likely is that outcome? What variables are within my control? What can I do to reduce the risk? Now you're no longer overwhelmed. You're thinking. And thinking creates structure. Because most fear feels intense, not because the situation is extreme, but because it is undefined. Your mind fills the unknown with exaggerated outcomes. It imagines scenarios without limits. It amplifies consequences without evidence. That's where panic comes from. Unclear threat. The moment you define the threat, its intensity drops, because clarity replaces imagination. And once you see the situation clearly, you can start building countermoves. This is where power begins. You don't eliminate fear by ignoring it. You eliminate its control by preparing for it. If you fear rejection, you train yourself to face it repeatedly until it loses impact. If you fear failure, you break down the process and reduce the variables that cause mistakes. If you fear uncertainty, you gather information and create multiple options. Every fear can be translated into action. Every unknown can be mapped. And once it is mapped, it becomes manageable. Now here's the critical shift. Fear should not stop your movement. It should guide your preparation, because the presence of fear means there is something important at stake. Something that has value, something that can change your position. And if you learn to use that signal correctly, you gain an advantage over those who avoid it. While they are running away, you are learning. While they are distracting themselves, you are building strategy. While they are controlled by emotion, you are collecting data. That's how you separate yourself. Now imagine this over time. Every situation that once intimidated you becomes something you've already analyzed. Every risk becomes calculated. Every outcome becomes predictable to a certain degree. Your mind stops overreacting. It starts operating. You no longer freeze when something feels uncertain. You don't delay because something feels uncomfortable. You don't hesitate because something could go wrong. You already know what could go wrong, and you already have a response. That creates a different level of confidence. Not emotional confidence, but calculated certainty. Because you are not moving blindly, you are moving with awareness. And awareness removes fear's control. So the next time fear appears, don't escape it. Pause. Break it down. Define it. Then build your response, because hidden inside every fear is a map. And if you learn how to read it, you will always be one step ahead of those who refuse to look. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. Fear guides me. Number 5. Weaponize absence and scarcity. Most people believe that being constantly present makes them valuable. They think more visibility means more influence. More talking means more respect. More availability means stronger connections. So they show up everywhere. They respond instantly. They make themselves easy to access. And without realizing it, they destroy their own impact. Because what is always available is rarely valued. Familiarity reduces attention. Predictability lowers curiosity. When people know they can reach you anytime, see you anytime, get a response anytime, they stop appreciating your presence. You become normal, and normal has no weight. Now understand this shift. Value is not created by how much you give. It is created by how limited your access becomes. Scarcity changes perception. When something is not always available, it becomes more noticeable. People start paying closer attention. They become more aware of your presence because it is no longer constant. This is not manipulation. This is psychology. Humans are wired to value what feels rare, to focus on what can be lost, to chase what is not easily accessible. And if you understand this, you stop trying to be everywhere. You start becoming selective. You don't respond to everything. You don't engage in every conversation. You don't make yourself constantly visible. You choose when to appear and when to disappear. That control creates tension. Because when your presence is limited, people begin to notice the gap. They start wondering where you are, what you're doing, why you're not reacting like before. And that curiosity increases your perceived importance. Now here's where most people misunderstand this concept. They think absence means ignoring everything or disconnecting completely. That's not strategy, that's avoidance. Real absence is controlled, it is intentional, it is calculated, it serves a purpose. You are not disappearing because you are weak or overwhelmed. You are stepping back to increase your value, to maintain your focus, to avoid unnecessary exposure. Because every time you overexpose yourself, you give away leverage. People learn your patterns, they predict your behavior, they reduce your impact. But when your presence is unpredictable, you become harder to read. And what is hard to read becomes harder to control. This creates a psychological shift in how others respond to you. They become more attentive, more careful, more aware of how they interact with you because they no longer feel guaranteed access, and access is power. The less available you are, the more people value the moments when you are present. Your words carry more weight. Your silence carries more meaning. Your actions create more impact. This is how authority is built, without force. Now apply this to your behavior. Stop over-communicating. Stop explaining everything. Stop being instantly available to everyone. Create space. Let conversations breathe. Let responses take time. Let your presence become something that is experienced, not expected. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You will feel the urge to respond quickly, to stay engaged, to maintain constant interaction. That's your old pattern trying to keep you visible. Resist it, because the moment you control your availability, you control how people perceive your importance. Now here's the deeper layer. Scarcity doesn't just affect others, it affects you. When you are not constantly reacting to everything around you, your focus sharpens. Your energy is no longer scattered. Your attention is no longer divided. You start moving with intention. You choose where to invest your time. You choose where to direct your energy. You choose what deserves your presence. And that level of control increases your internal stability. You are no longer driven by external demands. You are directed by internal priorities. That's real power. So if you want to increase your psychological weight, stop trying to be everywhere. Start becoming selective. Limit access. Control visibility. And let your absence create value where your presence once lost it. Because in a world where everyone is constantly available, the one who isn't becomes unforgettable. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My presence has value. Number 6. Map weakness patterns. Every person moves through life with invisible routines shaping their behavior. These routines are not random. They are structured loops built from repetition, emotion, and response history. Most individuals never notice them, which is why they keep making the same mistakes under different conditions. They think situations are changing, but in reality, their internal sequence stays identical. When stress enters, when attention increases, when outcomes matter, the same behavioral script activates again and again. This is where true understanding begins, not in judging actions, but in identifying repeatable structures behind those actions. Once you learn how to observe these structures, people stop being unpredictable and start becoming readable systems. You begin to notice that certain environments trigger specific reactions, certain conversations activate emotional shortcuts, and certain challenges expose predictable flaws. This is not guesswork. It is observation of behavioral rhythm. Every individual has breaking points. Some collapse when timing is rushed. Others lose control when challenged publicly. Some become overly defensive when questioned directly. Others shut down when required to take responsibility quickly. These responses are not random. They are conditioned reflexes formed through repeated life experiences. And once you can identify them, you gain clarity on how decisions are formed beneath surface behavior. The same principle applies inwardly. You also operate through hidden cycles. There are moments when your judgment becomes slower, when your reaction becomes reactive instead of calculated, when your discipline weakens under certain conditions. These are not flaws in identity, but predictable activation points within your own structure. Most people never study themselves with honesty, so they continue repeating internal errors without understanding the origin. But when you begin mapping your own response patterns, something changes. You start noticing what triggers inconsistency, what leads to impulsive behavior, and what situations distort your clarity. This awareness allows you to intervene before repetition occurs. Instead of reacting blindly, you begin to anticipate your own tendencies and adjust before they fully activate. The same mapping process applies externally. When you study others carefully, you begin to recognize behavioral signatures. You see how someone reacts when their status is questioned, how they respond when they feel ignored, how they behave when their plans are disrupted. Over time, these reactions form a predictable profile, not because people are simple, but because humans rely heavily on default responses under emotional load. Once you identify these defaults, interaction becomes strategic. You understand where resistance will appear, where agreement is likely, and where emotional shifts will influence